It's going extremely well. So here we go. This is the longest 30 seconds ever.
Welcome to Making More Money for You with Magnus Carter. Whether you feel that you don't have enough money to start investing or are under the preconceived notion that investing is only for the wealthy, Magnus and his expert guests are here to help you. Now here is your host, Magnus Carter.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Magnus Carter. You're on the Making More Money for You show on Voice America Business Channel. I want to thank Gianna last week about informing us that there are investors out there that want to help startup companies, and you can actually apply for that to start your side hustle and make that um, your main type of work, if you will. So you can quit the 9 to 5 and focus solely on your work. If you have any more questions about that, see last week's show. You can get it on all the major streaming platforms or on voiceamerica.com. But today is a very special show because it's been over a year trying to make this show happen due to various reasons. And I'm actually going to give you access to one of my mentors that actually got me into publishing and helped me achieve some of my goals that I'm here today. Uh, to do that, my very special guest from across the pond, welcome to the show, Daniel. Daniel Locke.
Hello, thank you. It's great to be here. It's good to see you
Absolutely.
again.
It's good seeing you as well. It has been such a long time since we talked. There's been such growth in both of our professional lives. But before we get to where we're at now, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you actually became, uh, how we actually met, which was actually kind of different, if you will.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with so we met this must be 2 years ago,
Yeah, it's about two
about two
years
years
already.
ago. And I was head coach for a online training company specializing in production or producing or self-publishers producing their books. And you were a student, a very good student. You had an enormous potential. You're one of the students that separated themselves from the pack, which was always encouraging. It's one of the people we would have considered that the 5%. We always called them the 5%, because you got 95% of people who want to achieve what they say they want to achieve, and you got the 5% that have the ability or the commitment or the motivation to actually put in what's required. And unfortunately, that's about 5% of people that actually know what's involved and actually go and do it. So there's not that many people. So we would have put you in the 5%. And at the time we were working on a sort of masterclass version of the course, and we invited, we put it open to people to take advantage of an initial opening offer. And you were one of the people that took up the offer, of course, because you were one of the 5%. And then we were trialing that with what we called the tribes. So there was you, and there was 11 other people in your tribe, and me, and we had 3 tribes. And for 3 months, we met every Tuesday for 2 hours, and we did intensive training sessions on a particular topic of that week to get you guys up to where you would be competent enough to fully understand the absolute inner workings of how to produce your product, which was a book. But what we were teaching you was how to produce a product in terms of customer research, what the competition is doing, analyzing the competition, the graphic design based on what your competition responds to, everything, from the marketing up to the production of your products, and then the launch of your product, and then selling it. So that was the underlying training you were receiving, but it was in the form of a book. And since then, we've stayed in touch, and we've been sort of watching from afar each other's businesses grow. And here we are today.
Absolutely.
That's the short version.
Yeah, that can get extremely. That's an hour, at least an hour
Yeah,
call
I'll
in
keep it.
itself to go through all of
Yeah,
that stuff. Yeah, I remember going on one of we had question and answer calls, and I
right.
remember
Q&A
when
calls. That's it. Yeah.
yep, when we one of the students was seeing so much happen with just a little bit of coaching, a little bit of extra coaching. And once that opened up, I remember buying that extra program, and instead it was all sold out for, the normal price, but I tried the extra price that not a lot of
Mhm.
people did, and it let me buy it, which was kinda
Yeah,
quirky.
nice.
I'm like, "Well, alright, it's an extra $500, but it's well worth it." And it was an excellent investment. I'm like, "Oh, I'm in." I'm like, as soon as I got that, that lovely email afterwards. So, you're absolutely right. But Dan, what got you into publishing to begin with?
Well, that's a interesting story. I fell into it. I fell into it. So I'd had some experience with an online business before, and I fell into that too. So let me go back to the end of 2014, early 2015. So I was working in the offshore oil and gas industry. I was working out of Singapore. I was a health and safety advisor on an offshore construction barge. I was working in Indonesia, Malaysia, India, places like that offshore. And we were either laying pipe or building things at sea, basically.
Okay.
And the oil price crashed. So the barrel of oil went from, I think it was $140 down to like $50 or something crazy in a really, really short
Wow.
period of time. So the whole oil industry was decimated back then. I don't know if anybody remembers it, but it was brutal. Companies went bust, tens of thousands of people got laid off. And yeah, and I don't think it's really recovered. Well, maybe recently, but only since Ukraine's kicked off as oil prices really sort of increased. But it was decimated. Now, I was living in Germany at the time, in Munich. I didn't speak German. I had a German girlfriend, which she was pretty annoyed I didn't speak German by that point. We've been together a few years, but I would work 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off. So I'd fly to Singapore, do 6 weeks work, 12-hour days, 7 days a week, because you're offshore. You don't, that's how it is. It's pretty brutal, but it's solid, hard, honest work. It's pretty cool. And then you come home for 6 weeks and you've got 6 weeks off. So you're only really working six months of the year, which suited me. I don't mind working hard, but I also like my time off. So it was great. But when the job ended, I was living in Munich. I didn't have a job. I didn't have an income. Didn't speak the language, and I was like, oh, what the hell am I going to do? I want to go back to England, so I decided to have a look at this online businesses that people had. I heard something about, I
Mm,
didn't know anything about,
okay.
and I sort of threw myself into that, and I ended up, which most people will do, is having a sort of FBA, Amazon FBA business. You produce
Oof.
some products, you sell them online, and that's the kind of story. That's how it goes. So I did that for about 3 years, and I made a lot of money. I started off with an initial investment of about 6.5 grand, but I generated just over about 600,000 in the total life of the business, which
Wow. Okay.
I'm really pleased with. I had 36 products, sold them in Japan, US, all over Europe. But I never made any money. I never made any profit. It was just a very, very expensive lesson and like how not to do stuff. And
Yep.
I had some wins, I had some losses, but I learned so much. But when it didn't, when I finally had to wrap it up, and I had to say to myself, well, that didn't work out. That wasn't what I expected to be. In my mind, that was a failure. Now, I didn't go bankrupt or anything like that, but it wasn't what it was supposed to be. So in my mind, it was a failure. And it took me a really, really long time to pick myself up from that and dust myself off. But in the meantime, I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to work in London for the UK Civil Service as a consultant. And so I did that for about 3 years. And that paid extremely well. And again, I was learning. I was a little out of my depth when I started, and to be honest with you, I was probably a little bit out of my depth when I finished. It's that kind of environment. You're always in a room with much, much smarter people, which is a great place to be because you learn, but you never really feel like you found your feet. So it's good. It's good. You just have a lot of imposter syndrome. So that was a really amazing experience as well. But then that wrapped up with COVID in 2020. So again, something out of my control affected a lot of people. I'm sure a lot of
Yes.
people's businesses were affected and their income was affected and their lifestyle was affected. And it was the same for me. So I was living in London. I had a very expensive flat in a part of London called Westminster, which was close to where I work because I could walk to work. And I was like, yeah, fine, I'll rent this flat. It's convenient, whatever. Bad decision, but there we go. So I packed it up, put everything in storage, and I got myself down to the south of France, just as COVID was really kicking off. And I stayed down there, and I bought this course that I saw online when I was watching YouTube one evening, and this advert popped up, and I saw it, and I was like, this looks interesting. I've had an online business before, but I had to deal with physical products and I had to ship them all over the world and I had to deal with customers. And to be honest, it was an absolute nightmare. I hated it.
Yes.
I wanted the result from it, but it wasn't enjoyable, you know?
Mhm.
But this is something else. You can have a digital product. So I'm not shipping anything. I don't have to deal with manufacturers. I don't have to store anything. I don't have to deal directly with customers. This is perfect. A digital product. I've got all the experience I need because I had that other business. I can apply all the lessons I learned there. I know business. I know how to set up a limited company. I know how to run a company. You know, I've done a lot of consulting. This could be it. And so that's how it started. I found what I wanted to do in my COVID time off, if you like. I didn't want to do nothing. And I thought, right, well, this is it. I'll throw my energy and all my effort and my savings and I'll do this. And that's how that started. It was just, it was the result of something out of my control and just reacting to it, you know, trying to make the best of it.
Yeah, because that time frame, I think that's about the time frame. A little after that is when I signed up for it because COVID was
Yeah.
still like the tail end of COVID. I even took a different job so I can do this work. That
Yeah.
was I was that's how dedicated that I am to feel that this will work. And I seen the lives that the books were touching,
Right.
because everybody likes reading. And
Yeah.
during that time, you Netflix only had so much content and everybody blew through
Yeah.
that in like
Yeah.
4 or 5 months. It's like, all right, now what do we want to do? And I don't want to talk to the people I'm living with. So what else can I do? So and the book sales took off and I enjoyed it. I love the process, the people I met all over, and it's just it's exploding. As your stuff took off,
Yeah.
mine's starting to take off as well. It's more or less when I was talking with Justine when we were building our brand is I didn't go for the bestseller list. I didn't do that. I my game plan was I wanted to build a strong brand that I can
Right.
build upon, and it's taken me a little bit longer, but the trademark's almost done through the lawyers.
Nice.
Thank God.
Yeah. It
Uh,
takes a long time for that.
oh, it's been a year and 3 months. The lawyer reached out
Oh,
to me.
wow.
It's like it's over a year and it's still impending. I'm like, okay, well, you go do your thing and let me know when I need to do
Right.
something. So, well, out of all the things that you've done, what have you? All the jobs you have, the businesses and whatnot. Where do you think you fit the best in?
That's a really good question. So I, I, I discovered that I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I'm at my happiest when I'm working on something for myself that doesn't have a limit. The only limit is me or the my resources that I have available to me. And you know, I don't know about you, but I've always been one of those people that imagines what they would do if they won the lottery, right?
I've
Oh,
done
I'd
that.
buy this, I'd buy that.
Yeah.
And then I kept saying to myself, but you don't even play the lottery. Why are you thinking about that? That's never, ever going to happen. And even if you played it, it's still never going to happen. But I figured, well, I tell you what, I tell you how it's never really going to happen. It's never going to happen working for someone else.
Exactly.
That's for damn sure. You're never going to get that kind of money working for somewhere else. And I always felt that I always wanted that dream. I always wanted to have that freedom and that independence to be able to go to, as we were talking earlier about, to the Bahamas,
Mhm.
and to be able to travel when I want, go where I like. I don't want to be mega rich. Like, I don't want a super yacht or anything like that. But it'd be nice to not have to worry about having to pay a mortgage. It would be nice not to go into town, do some shopping, and not really have to really worry about buying stuff. I'm not talking about buying Rolexes every day, but just being comfortable enough to just enjoy life in a different kind of way. But I don't believe that you can really get that kind of freedom working for someone else. And so you have to work for yourself. And so that's my goal. That's what's driven me. It's the freedom to be able to make the decisions I want. Freedom at work, in work, the freedom out of work, and ultimately, money can make you wealthy, but wealth is not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily mean finance. Wealth, you can be
Right.
wealthy and not have a lot of money.
Mm.
Because you can be
Right.
a wealthy individual through life experience. You can be a wealthy individual through, just having a lot of love, or a lot of people love you. But for me, I'm wealthy if I have options, and finance or money gives you options,
Mhm.
and it's the options I want. The money is a side effect of that, right? I want the options. I want to be able to choose what I want to do and when I want to do it. And if that means I have to have X amount of money to do that, then I need X amount of money to do that. But really, it's not the money I want. I don't want to see big bank balances. I want options. I want to be able to take my family and go on a nice holiday. Let's go next month, right?
Right.
So I want those options. And to do that, I need to work for myself. So that fits with me. So I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I'm at my most happy when I'm doing something that aligns me with those goals. So I feel like that's where I fit in the most. I've worked for lots of different companies and organizations and government organizations, and it's interesting work. It's fascinating at times, but deep down, it's not really where I want to be.
Well, I can definitely attest to that. Being in IT and traveling all over the US, doing work and whatnot, seeing
Yeah,
everything. It was
sure.
great to do it, but I was always under time constraint. I
Yeah,
always, I was always on a deadline. There were times where I woke up and I forgot where I was because I
yeah,
was gone so much. Yeah, but I agree with you. The power of choice is very daunting to a lot out there. Even no choice is a choice if you don't decide to make that choice. But how do you keep your mind disciplined enough to know what choices will benefit you and for the long term instead of going for the short term?
yeah. Great question. I mean, there's lots of different ways to do this, but I think having a plan, and in that plan having some kind of roadmap of how you want to get from where you are to where you want to be is really important. There's you can have dreams or you can have goals, and there is a difference. A goal
Okay.
is where you have a plan in place to achieve that goal. A dream is just a dream.
Sure.
Wouldn't it nice to have a big car and a Ferrari one day? Yeah, that's a lovely dream. Right. My goal is to have a nice car in 5 years and a Ferrari in six. And this is how I'm going to do it. There's a difference. So
Okay, I see that.
I think you have to have a roadmap. I think you have to have a plan, and you need to be really honest with yourself. Well, how long is this going to take, and what is it I want to achieve, and how am I going to achieve it? What do I need to get there? Who, what, when, where, and how. If you can work that out, you've got a plan. And all of a sudden, your dream has just become a goal, and it's all of a sudden now it's realistic. And that's the start. That's how you make a dream realistic.
That's Yeah, that's very enlightening because the people that I've had on the show, just like yourself, is we've all come from different walks of life. We all have different circumstances. We all had different plans.
Yeah.
But each one, if you can take one thing from one person and incorporate it, that is a win altogether. And not just saying, well, he did this and I can't do anything that person did. There's always something to learn that I found
Oh, sure.
by
Yeah.
doing
I,
this.
I think I think if you feel that there's no way you can do what someone else has done, if that's how you think, you shouldn't even try. The first thing you need to do is adjust the way you think and the way you
Right.
see things, right? Because there's problems and there's opportunities, but they're the same thing.
Mhm.
It's just a different way of looking at it.
Oh, absolutely. And I remember when we were being taught marketing, these
Yeah.
are these are the 47 things that are proven. Okay, I looked at every single one of those 47 things. I ripped the paper up afterwards and I started going my own way.
Yeah.
And there's some that actually turned into those 47 things, but
Sure.
I found other items that were more effective and some that weren't effective, but uh it still is helping me get to where I need to be
Yeah.
myself personally.
Yeah. Yeah. Having a plan, and also a plan that plays to your strengths, and the things you like. You don't
Mhm.
necessarily have to be good at something, but if it's something you enjoy doing, you should try and incorporate that.
Oh, I can definitely attest to that. I'm spending a lot of time working on the back end part of the business that I'm enjoying so much. I'm
Really?
forgetting.
That's interesting. A lot of people don't enjoy that.
Oh, I love that. I
Yeah.
love the process. I find it honestly, I find it relaxing.
Yeah.
As weird
You're a
as
data
we,
guy though, aren't you? You're a data guy.
I'm more. Yeah, I'm a data guy. I'm like
Yeah.
more. okay, if I do this, this is going to happen. If this doesn't
Yeah,
happen, why
yeah,
didn't it happen? Fix it.
sure.
Type of thing going on.
Very logical. So you're a logical problem solving kind of guy. I know that, but there's people out there that are creatives. They can't stand the back end
Right.
stuff. They want to be in the front, designing logos, thinking about the creative ideas and the design and this kind of thing. And then, but without the back end processes and
Yeah.
automatizations, it's not going to work. You know, you've got to get your head around the things that you like and you want to do, and all the things you don't want to do and you don't like, because 9 times out of 10, the stuff that you don't want to do and you don't like is crucial,
Yes.
absolutely crucial. And I would say find a way to learn to love it, because you've got to. You know?
I've
But it harks back to what we were saying earlier about the 5%.
oh I,
The
oh
5% get that. They get it.
and, and I've been finding that I've been it's weird to say this, but I'm being more comfortable being uncomfortable.
Good.
I'm looking for ways to be uncomfortable in these
That's
things.
great. Yeah.
So, I'm like comfort. I'm like, okay, well, this is doing here, and I have these people working on this, and I'm working on that. It's like, but uh, it feels like I'm not doing anything. But as soon as I get into that mindset, I'm like, well, I'm gonna go try this,
Yeah.
and go spend like 3 or 4 hours on that, and then turn around, and it's like 11 o'clock, and I didn't eat yet at night. I just want to keep working,
Yeah.
honestly. And
That's the place, isn't it? In that zone. And I love that. I love that when a whole day can go by and you're like, why am I so hungry? It's only, oh, yeah, I should have eaten six
yes.
hours ago. That's why. It's a good day. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, because I still have the accountability meetings. I'm
Great.
still doing those. I haven't been to them recently because I took this new position and I'm
Hmm.
actually more on site now, but I give my updates. I'm still a part of the tribe, if you will.
Great.
And we're still going. A lot of people are doing what they're doing. Again, they're getting there as their journey allows them.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say for that. And also the crazy another crazy thing about this whole monopoly of thing. I feel like I'm not doing as much as I should be doing, or I should be doing more. But I don't know if you found this out when you talk to somebody else and they know what you're up to, and you give them like a fire hose worth of information of what you've done in the last 2 weeks. It finally clicks on me. It's like, I've done this much work in 2 years, actually in the last 3 months, than I have in the year before. And
Yeah.
if now that mindset, where does that come from?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's finding your feet with something that you enjoy, and also seeing the results of your hard work. There's nothing more motivating than working on something and you getting results. It doesn't have to be, financial. It can just be that you're moving, what we call moving the needle. That you can see that needle moving. You're getting closer to your goal, whatever that is. And there is nothing more motivating in my mind than that. When you see yourself getting closer to your goals, you just want to work harder and harder and harder, and it becomes addictive. And when you get addicted to something that you never thought you'd be addicted at, or you start to realize that you're good at something that you never thought you were good at, you want to do it more. And I think that's where it comes from.
Okay, that's that's an interesting thought to actually dive into a little bit more,
Sure.
because our minds are really weird things. They can be great assets, or they're our biggest enemies.
Right.
It all depends
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
where we're
Sure.
at.
Yeah. I mean, when I was at school, I really struggled with dyslexia. I still struggle with dyslexia. It holds me up. Obviously, there's really great tools now that for my particular type of dyslexia, spelling, my handwriting really is bad. But, for years, I avoided any kind of education, any kind of study at all. For years, it wasn't until I was in my mid 30s that I was working offshore. I was a security consultant doing security, very hands-on kind of work though.
Right.
And I wanted to transition into the health and safety advising. But to do that, I had to do some exams, and it was only through being offshore that I met these guys and I saw what they did, and I realized it was very similar to what I was already doing, but it was a proper qualification. So I had to get my head into some books, but because it was something I really wanted to do and I quite enjoyed it, I found that I'll be honest, I was like, why have I waited so long to do this? This isn't hard. I can do this. But I had these fears in my head from when I was a kid at school, like I was a teenager. I still had these fears and these concerns to hold me back, saying, "Oh, you're no good at that. Don't do that." And for nearly 20 years, I just believed it. And then when I
Wow.
finally took the plunge to do it and think, right, I've got to do these exams. I really want this job. And I got a distinction in the exam.
Hmm. Oh,
And I was like,
that's amazing.
whoa. I was like, yeah, I couldn't believe it. And I was like, it's because I enjoyed it and I really wanted it. I learned to love it. And it just sucked the information up. And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm not bad at this. For some reason, I just felt like I was. And from then on, I just soaked everything up and tried to soak as much stuff up as I could, like a sponge, and keep pushing and pushing and pushing. But I had a 20-year delayed start because of fears and, programming from when I was a kid, But, everybody's got something. Everybody's got something. But, if you can take the plunge and put yourself out, like you say, outside of your comfort zone and keep trying and doing things that you don't enjoy doing or you don't want to do or you don't know how to do, that's great, because sitting there somewhere is something that could really trigger you into a whole new different path. But unless you open yourself up to those opportunities or those ideas, you're going to miss it. And that's why some people, I think you've really got to try and push yourself out off the path you're already on onto a different path where it's completely unknown, and give it a go. Just try it.
Yeah, because
And that's what
honestly,
entrepreneurs do, right? That's what entrepreneurs do all the time. They're
every time.
constantly doing that. They don't have a secure job or a salary, or they don't know where they're going to be. They can't. They only get 20. They get, people in a normal job. They get 25 days holiday a year. They know when they're going on holiday every year. Entrepreneurs, we don't know that. We've got none of that. We're risk takers. We take risks, and 9 times out of 10 they don't pay off. But on that 10th time, that could be the one, and that's what we do. So we're always doing that. But if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to be comfortable with that.
Yeah, because I a while back I remember talking to some other mentors that I had that I still keep in contact with about doing a collaboration work with another
Mm-hmm.
platform with Mission Matters. And they asked me, "What do you want? What is your chapter written about?" I actually wrote a chapter on failures.
Oh yeah,
I
interesting.
it was very interesting because I'm sitting here looking at it. I wrote everything out. Uh, I went to them about it a couple times about writing it, but as I was writing, I become more in depth with actually being okay with with failing, but
Right.
not
You
being a
should. Yeah,
failure,
absolutely.
because I found more growth out of failing under something stupid instead of trying to half-ass it or trying to find a way around it. That setting up the the actual boundaries of my acceptance of failing and turning it around. It's like, okay, time to cut and run. This is it. What did I learn from this? Well, I'll take the time off, of course, of because the emotional state.
Sure.
Find out what I learned, and then going back and analyzing. It's like, what happened? Why did this happen? And then you get those. I have like a list of questions to go through, and answer them as I can, and then just write it down, get it out of my head, and just move on to the next thing. So when something else comes on, it's like, okay, well, I ran into this before, and somewhere in my notes or my some in brain, I'll actually pull it out. And it's like, oh, I did this. Okay, don't do this again. Try something else. But Dan, I can't believe it. We are done the first half of the show.
It's gone quick, huh?
It is. I really can't believe it. We're the information that our experiences together. It's
Yeah.
similar, but they're different, and everybody out there is the same way. But we're gonna take a
Yeah.
break real quick. If you have any questions for us about publishing, about doing weird stuff, about failing, anything in business about making money, or anything that this show's about, please call in at 1-866-472-5790. We'll be glad to talk to you. We'll talk things out. If not, we're going to be right back after these commercials, and we're going to continue our discussion.
You are clear.
Awesome.
Excellent. Thank you. It's a stretch.
Yep, stretch.
Man, that's gone fast.
That went by extremely fast.
Yeah.
Now, in the second half of the show, is there anything you want to talk about in particular?
No, not really. I think you finished off really well there on fears. I was going to touch on that myself. Sorry, fears, failures.
Good. It's okay.
Super, super, super valuable to understand how you failed and to embrace it. Pick yourself up, learn how to fail, because you look at any of these major famous people that, Elon Musk, Richard Branson, any of these guys, Gordon Ramsay, they've all failed many times before they succeeded. And it's part of the qualification you need to succeed. You can't really have success without having failed first.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think people need to know that.
And we can definitely bring that up at the second part, because because I wanted to get your take on that subject as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a good segue into it.
Yeah, definitely. I saw that as you were talking about it. I was like, oh, we've only got a few minutes. That's a shame.
Well, now we'll pick it up with your side of
Sure.
this
No
out of
worries.
everything. Absolutely.
How many people do you usually get listening into the show? You said something.
It averages. The one time it's been up to, it's normally about 300 live, and then it can range anywhere from 6 to 1,000 for the week on playbacks. I'm over 13,000 listens already in less than a year.
Yeah.
So
that's
it's still
total listens.
That's total listens.
Coming
worldwide.
back, gentlemen.
Magnus Carter. If you have any questions for Magnus or his guests, join us on the show at 866-472-5789. That's 866-472-5789. Now back to the show. Here is Magnus Carter.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show, or welcome to the show if you're just tuning in. I have one of my mentors here, starting to become a long time friend. And we're actually talking about a lot of things. We've mentioned so many different subjects that touch on anything that has to do with being an entrepreneur, taking chances all the way to failing, which is where I left off of my side of the story. But Dan, what are your thoughts on failure? What do you think is beneficial about it? And are there any bad points of it?
Yeah, so it's a really good thing to bring up. It's super valuable. I just want to say that a lot of people are fearful of taking the plunge and coming off of the path that we talked about before because they're worried about failing. But I don't think there's anything unnatural about that. I think it's completely normal. If you're contemplating leaving a comfortable job with a comfortable income and taking a risk, the fear of failure is front and center. What if this doesn't work out? But if you ever aspire to be like any of the successful people we know, I mean, you can pick any of them, like Gordon Ramsay, the chef, or Elon Musk, or Richard Branson, or pick any of those guys in the Shark Tank. I think you have in America. We have the Dragon's Den. They all failed, sometimes once, 2, 3 times before they were successful. All of them. And in failure is some of the most important lessons you can't get without failing. So it's really, really very important to understand that you're probably going to fail, and that's okay, because the lessons you learn in there are vital. And without sort of going on and on about it, but I failed, and in that process I was able to, it was hard, it was tough, and I really struggled with it. It took me a long time to really brush myself off and understand what went wrong, to actually have an honest word with myself about how I was responsible for everything that happened. And instead of blaming my vendors and my suppliers and the storage and who I was dealing with in China and who I was dealing with the logistics and how Amazon was the worst company in the world, it was all my fault. Every single part of that was my fault. And I had to take full, brutal ownership of it all in order for me to learn and to move on and make sure it didn't happen again, Right. And that's hard. That takes a long time. But I'll end this by just saying, I personally feel, and I don't know if anyone else would ever agree with me, but this is my view on it. I feel that to succeed, you can't, I don't believe you can really succeed without having failed first. I think that in failure, there is I think in failure, there's lessons that are crucial to succeed. It's like you're getting qualified to succeed, if that makes sense.
Well, it does make sense, because how can you measure your success without knowing how to fail?
Yeah, it's the lessons you learn actually about yourself. You can learn a lot about business and what did I do and what was the mistake I made, but how did you personally allow that to happen? What was on your mind? Were you focused? Were you distracted? Was there something else going on? Were you cutting corners? Were you trying to take a shortcut? how did that eventually take place? How did you allow that set of circumstances to realize? And I think in that soul searching, in that honesty with yourself, you can really learn a lot about you as a business owner, because it starts and it stops with you. And if you don't know you in success and failure, you're never going to really understand or realize what success is.
Oh, absolutely. Even knowing yourself is the hardest thing because we don't really want to take the time to learn about it. It's like
Mm.
we're told exactly who we are, how we're supposed to react, what we're supposed to do in life. Uh, we were honestly all conditioned to do the grow up, be a kid, grow up, go to school, go to college, get a job, find someone to marry, lots of kids, or don't do that and be a bum the rest of your life. Those were our only two options as we grew up by
Yeah.
society and by the people that loved us, because that's what they were taught.
Yeah. 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 You really do have to break the mold to start your own business. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to be prepared to fail. You can't, if you expect to succeed on your very first attempt. I mean, good luck to you, and I hope
Yes,
you do.
it happens
But
slowly.
it does. But I think sometimes eventually people will fail because they haven't learned the failure lessons and they've become successful, and that's amazing. But somewhere along the line, something's going to go wrong, and you could risk losing it all because you haven't learned how to fail and you haven't learned about yourself in that process.
Okay. Well, I had something that just popped into my mind. During your failure, success, your multiple business adventures, even working for somebody, even growing up, how has your thoughts and use of money changed?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Magnus, look at your chat.
Oh, hold on. I'll give you a second to think on that one
Okay, sure.
because we actually have a caller.
Okay, great.
Hi, Valerie. Welcome to the show.
Hey, good to be here.
What can we do for you, Valerie? You still there?
He was my coach when I started, and I have a couple of questions for him.
Oh, so
Okay.
another
Uh,
former student that we may or may not know. Okay, what's your questions?
it is, I am ready to publish. I believe in my book. It's all been checked out by the coaches, but I haven't gotten reviewers yet. And that is such a intimidating thing to try to do. It's like asking me to drive a Formula One car and get around the track at a certain speed or something. It's like a lot. And I feel like it would take me a year to get 100 reviewers before I publish, which is the advice from our class. But my
Okay.
mastermind mates are telling me, publish now, just do it, and we'll stop getting the reviews later.
Yeah, that's
So
good
I wanted
advice.
your opinion on that, Dan.
That's good advice. Get your book out, get it published, and then start getting reviews immediately. One here, two there, three there. You'll get them. It'll take time, but to line up
Yeah.
100 reviewers before you publish is almost that's not really very practical. I can't imagine that being feasible, really, to be honest. I would get your book out and
Okay.
just work hard on getting the reviews as soon as it's out.
I
It's good.
will.
It's
I'll
always
stay
good to get a
focused.
bunch of reviews when you launch the first time, but I don't think it's
Right.
very practical to get a lot of reviewers lined up before you launch.
Yeah, I was just trying to do what execute the information I paid for, but a lot of people are telling me don't do that.
Yeah,
Just go ahead and publish and stay
yeah,
focused on that, which I can
yeah.
do. I put out a good book. Now I'm ready to
Great.
focus on that. I don't want to sit on it a year.
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Uh,
No.
yeah, and then my other quick question is, I have a legacy book published that I did with my dad just for fun. I never
Nice.
marketed it. It's out there. Am I going to have a problem with branding or promoting different niches? I did establish a publishing company.
Well, I mean, are you writing the books under the same pen name or under the same author name? Are they?
I added my middle initial to separate them. So I have two author names, just the same, but with my middle initial.
And have you launched both books or either of the books yet? I know you
I've
haven't
only,
launched one of them. The other one where you did
but
that.
I
Have you launched
launched
that?
the other one. I'm sorry, say it again, please.
So the book you did with your dad is the one you haven't launched. Is that correct?
No, I did launch that one. It got two reviews or something. And that was 2010. And
Oh,
now
then
I'm
don't worry
getting
about it.
ready
Do
to
not worry.
launch.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Just forget it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I won't worry
No,
about
that's
it.
13 years ago
I'm
now
going to
with
go
two reviews
forward.
that it's not going to do anything at all.
Right. That's fine. I just won't worry about it.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan. Well, I really enjoyed working with you when you were our coach. We miss you and glad that you're still here with us.
Well, I appreciate that, Valerie. It's very kind of you. Good luck, and I hope you do well.
Yeah, you too. And I hope to hear you on Magnus's show again soon. You guys are doing great.
Nice. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All the best.
Okay, have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. That's
Well,
nice. That's
yeah.
nice. That's really nice.
And honestly, this is the first show I've actually had a caller on.
Okay.
Honestly, out of the whole year, a little over under a year, that's my first caller.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
So
there we go.
Even better.
Boundaries. Nice.
Yes, we're breaking everything today, and I did promote the show during the other place of people that we know, so they might be listening. They might call in. Who knows?
Cool.
So now back to the question that I've asked before.
Failure. What was the question? Oh, money. Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. Now, through all your experiences of working with, as an employee, working for yourself, going bankrupt, broke, or out of business, and starting new businesses, how has your concept and usage of money changed?
Okay, so I just want to clarify. I've never been bankrupt.
Okay, no
that's
bankrupt.
The first
Okay,
thing. So I've always paid everybody I owe.
Okay.
More or less, and I always try to do that. So there's two sides to this. I think the first thing is that like in business and personally, I am naturally terrible with money. I'm naturally terrible with money because for a very, very long time I didn't have any, and then when I started consulting about 15, nearly 20 years ago, I started to earn some quite good money and it just went to my head. So I've always bought nice things. And then I find myself taking risks with a business or something like that, and then selling my stuff to try and pay for some advertising or something, some really bad decision I've had to make. And, I've been quite impulsive. So when I have had a project or a business do really, really well, I've been like, woohoo, let's go on holiday. Let's do this, let's do that. And then something else happens. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, perhaps I should have been a bit more careful. So I've learned those lessons. I've learned those lessons well. The other thing is, of course, when you're in business, is you always have to pay the tax man. And
yes, he wants his money.
He wants his money, and you've got to make sure you've got enough money to pay him. And I say this through experience because, again, I've made those mistakes myself, where I've had a new or fledgling business, and where the proper advice is to put some money aside so you can pay your VAT. In the UK, we call it VAT. Your corporation tax, everything else you've got to pay. You've got to put a percentage of what you're earning aside so you can pay those bills. But in a new business, the temptation is like, well, any new business is always going to struggle for finance and money. I would say a huge portion of them have that problem. How do we get money to invest in the business, to grow the business? And if you've got a big account there with lots of your savings in it to pay the tax man, and you've got to leave it there for a whole year without touching it when you're struggling, the temptation is to dip into that and think, I'll pay that back into that account for the tax man later, because I need it right now because I need to promote this book. I need to pay for some advertising. I need to do whatever it is. Don't do that. It's really, really hard not to put your hands in the cookie jar. But again, I've done that. I've put my hands in the cookie jar and I've spent the money for the tax man. And I thought, you know what, if this pays out, I'll be able to put that money back in the cookie jar and everything will be great. And it hasn't. And then the tax man comes calling at the end of the year and you're like, I'm sorry, I need to pay you off over the next 6 months. And that's never cool. So, for me, I've made all of these mistakes, all of them. And I can honestly say that, I'm in a very different place now. I've learned these lessons. And I would give that advice freely to anyone to make sure that you don't make those same mistakes. You know, I've been up and I've been down, I've been up and I've been down several times in business, and you've just got to make sure that when you're doing well, you're saving and you're putting it aside, and you're being sensible with it, because it can go wrong almost as quickly as it can go right. You know, it can go wrong quicker than it goes right. It takes a
Oh
long time
yes.
for things going right. It can go wrong really, really fast. So for hundreds of reasons. So just try and be mature with your spending, and with putting things aside.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been really honest there. I've not been good with that.
Well, that not everybody is, honestly,
Yeah.
and
So
that's one of the fears of actually starting to do this is what happens if I do succeed? I remember you asking that question a couple times. It's like,
yeah.
what happens if you do succeed? How do you treat things? How do you change the way you think about it? Do you keep the same concepts as before? Do you change into a different person? If you do, how
Yeah,
fast do
you
you change?
it depends. Like if you're a young person and you come into money, and this isn't always true, but the temptation is to spend some, to spend.
Mhm.
Sometimes you can be spend a lot, and that's fine. We do things when we're young. The idea of being young is to make mistakes, to learn from them, so that when we grow older, we've made those mistakes. We're not making them anymore. Just don't be the person who's still making those mistakes when they're older. You know, don't be that person. Um, so yeah, you know, it's really, it's one of those things. You can give advice, you know, it's good advice. You know, person understands the advice you're giving them, but you know what they're going to do anyway. So you know, even if you're going to spend the money, just enjoy it. But you know, don't do anything so stupid that you can't come back from it. The tax man's not going away, and you don't want to go
No.
bankrupt. If you go bankrupt, you never get over it. You know, even in the UK, it's for 7 years. You got to declare it, and even after that, you're filling out applications or you're filling out forms or whatever it is. You're always asked, "Have you ever been to bankrupt?" So it will never leave you ever. It will never leave you. So be careful.
Wow, I didn't realize that. I think it's either 7 or 10 years here. I guess it depends on what type of bankruptcy you file for in the
Yeah,
US.
yeah. So I think you have to voluntarily declare it, or there's certain restrictions. I don't really know,
Yeah.
but I know on forms that I fill out, just generally, even for just insurance, just
Mhm.
an insurance form, it says, "Have you ever been bankrupt?" And you know,
Okay.
you've got to answer those things honestly, and that's after 10 years, 15 years. You still have to answer those questions, and it will affect you. So for the rest of your life. So you got to make sure you pay that tax man, and you pay your bills, and you pay your business loans or whatever they are. You have to pay them.
And you get a good accountant.
Yeah, having a good account is very important, but you know, also you've got to understand these things yourself. And again, for some
Oh,
people, that's
yes.
very difficult, because you know, getting your head around a spreadsheet, understanding a profit and loss and a balance sheet, that's hard for some people. It's you're
Mhm.
looking at, like, I don't know what am I looking at? But you've got to find a way. You've got to find a way to learn that stuff, because it's all very well hiring an accountant. You need to know what they're doing. You might think,
Right.
well, why am I hiring one then? That's not a that's not a good place to be. You need to know what they're doing, because you need to understand what they're doing, because
Mhm.
ultimately you need to be able to look at that sheet. You've got to understand it, and you need to know you've hired a good one. This is your business. This is your business. You have to take full responsibility that everything that goes on in it. And just because you don't have time to do the accounts, that's the reason you hire an accountant, because you don't have the time. You're not hiring an accountant because you can't be bothered with it. You
Right.
still have to be bothered with it. You still have to understand it. You still have to educate yourself on it. You just don't have time. So you're subbing that out to an accountant, right? And like many other aspects of your business, you might hire someone else to do it for you, but you have to know what they're doing. Ideally, having already done it yourself, and now you're ready to
Right.
hand it over to someone else because you don't have time. And that's the only reason.
Right, and then you know if there's something going wrong or if they're doing
Right.
something wrong.
Exactly. You can teach them, you can coach them, you can educate them, you can critique them, because you know it already.
Exactly. Well, now that we talked about, the money and whatnot, about expansion, what when your business was starting to expand, any one of them, whichever one that was going up, one, any one of them, when did you realize it was time to hire somebody?
Just like as I was just saying, I mean, if I was working on a task and I got good at it,
Hmm.
but the biggest restriction I find that I have in business is either time or finances. They're the two things that you can run out of, or you never have enough of.
Right.
So when I need more time, I think, right, who can I get to do this particular task? But it will always be a task I'm very, very good at already. and I'll hand that off onto someone else so that I know that they're doing it. I can watch them doing it. I can even train them to do it. And then I'll monitor them doing it. And then I get that time back. So I'm basically, I'm buying myself time by hiring someone, because now I don't have to do whatever that task is. Because as a
Now,
business owner, you'll start working in your business, but eventually you want to be working on your business.
yeah, I remember Gordon Ramsay saying, "You want to own a restaurant. You don't want to be the cook in the restaurant,"
That's right. Yeah.
which is it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but he knows how to do every single job in that restaurant, from sweeping the floor to running the register to cooking the dishes to washing them up. He knows everything about everything in that restaurant. That's why he's the restaurant owner.
Right.
If you wanted to become a restaurant owner without having done any of those jobs, chances are your restaurant will fail.
Hmm. That is definitely food for
It might
thought.
not,
It
but
might
it's
not.
more likely that it will.
There's a possibility of it happening. Because I'm actually, as I'm expanding, I'm I'm finding myself doing the same thing. I'm writing, I'm learning every aspect of it. I'm learning the creative side of it, even though I'm not really good with the creative side of things, but I can see when the books are starting to come alive. I can actually
Yeah.
see this is exactly where I want it to go. This is what I need to change. I need to work with writers or authors that make this happen. I remember I honestly remember a very back and forth conversation with you about my first book cover,
Yeah.
because you thought it could have been better. I remember the exact words, but I won't put it out there.
Okay. All right.
And honestly, everybody that I have talked to and I fought for to get that book cover has bought that book because that is where they want to be. And that was after doing the research and the due diligence that we've done through the coursework, is sticking with that. And after sticking with it, it won 2 awards.
That's great. That's
So,
great. That's really great.
and yeah, I have a couple other ones that are out there just to see, just to test the waters with them.
Hmm.
I've also for marketing as well. I found that's been one of the best ways to market things. One last question I have for you. When you're ready, I know this is a very lengthy question
Hmm.
because we have 4 minutes left, that I was just told, is we'll end on this. When a person's ready to sign out of their business, they want to cash in,
Hmm.
they want to do, they've had enough of the business, they feel that they've accomplished everything that they accomplished out of it. What things, what, like 2 or 3 things that you as a business owner want to get prepped and want to highlight as you're selling the business?
To highlight as you're selling the business, well, you want to have a very solid understanding of your numbers. So what
Okay.
is your monthly profit, and what is your profit been for the last couple of years? What your gross figures, what your expenses? You need to understand those numbers. And
Okay.
somebody buying your business, depending on the type of business, if it's publishing, you can get multiples up to like 42 times multiples. It gets complicated, so I won't go into it too much here. But
Right.
what you also want to have is SOPs for your company, your
Mhm.
business. You need to have every process written out as a set of instructions. Every single thing that goes on in there has to be well documented, and that adds value to business as well. Um, but it really, really depends on the type of business,
Right.
what you're trying to sell it for, the value you're trying to get for it. It's a very, very expansive question. I'm not quite sure how to do that in 3 minutes.
Well, okay. Well, that's a good couple of things to look at and to give people thoughts of, their end game as they're actually planning their business. And one thing is actually the end game of it. What do you expect to do? When do you want to get out of it? So one question I'd like to ask, and it's been quite popular and quite on the spot for a lot of guests, is what is one thing throughout your journey as an entrepreneur and as a person, what lesson do you take that you still use to when you started to now?
I think just having a clearly defined path on whatever it is I'm doing, whatever, if it's a small task or a large task or even a full size project, is understanding where I'm at. Like I was saying at the beginning, where I want to be,
Right.
what do I want to achieve, how I'm going to achieve it, where, when, who, what, where, when, how. whatever it is, small, medium, or large. Understand what you're doing, how you're doing it, what it is you want to achieve. Don't go anything with an open end because it can take you forever. You never get it finished.
Excellent. Well, Dan, I hate to say it, but we're at the end of the show.
Cool. All right, it's been a pleasure.
It has.
I'd just like to say that I am offering coaching for people who are just starting a business or they're in business and they need any sort of assistance or help. There's a lot of offers out there for people to do this, but they tend to be very prohibitively expensive. And I've decided to try and help the smaller business owners or the people in business with a very reasonable hour-long coaching sessions. So if you're interested, feel free to get in touch.
Okay. And how can we get in touch with you?
So there's some links I sent you for the bio.
Yep. They're in the show description.
Use those links, book a 15-minute call. We can have a chat and decide how we're going to help you, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, Dan, we are literally counting seconds down. I want to thank you for your time, for being on the show.
It's been a pleasure. Great. This has gone so fast. I've really enjoyed this. It's so great to see you again and talk to you. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And all the stuff that we've talked about, it's going to resonate with a lot of people out there. The great content and whatnot. I want to thank you again for your time. Thank you for being on the show. And next week, I don't know who I'm going to have on the show, but until then, it'll be a surprise. So the weather's starting to break. Get outside, enjoy some life, and come back to your business with, an open mind. Until next time, have a great week.
Take care.
All right, gentlemen, you are clear. Great job.
Awesome.
Thank you.